The power of quiet. Disconnection. No one ever told you. Jung. Have you ever wondered what really happens when you choose to walk away? Not out of anger or resentment, but simply to disconnect, to let go of the invisible threads that tie you to others? No shouting matches, no bitter goodbyes. Just a quiet step inward. A moment when you decide that peace matters more than obligation. And slowly, you begin to disappear. From conversations, from midnight messages, from those subtle nods of agreement, made just to keep others comfortable. It may seem like a small act, but that silence carries weight. Because in the world of emotions, distance isn't just space, it's a mirror. And when you step back, people are forced to face themselves, confronting parts they've long buried beneath your presence. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." When you walk away, the unconscious begins to rise. People don't just miss you, they fear losing the version of themselves that only existed when you were near. In today's video, we're diving deep into what truly happens inside someone's mind when you choose to walk away. Not as an act of spite, but as a journey back to yourself. And how that quiet decision can send shockwaves through the world you leave behind. If this is your first time visiting our channel, don't forget to like and subscribe so you can stay updated with our latest videos on spiritual topics, inner awakening, and philosophical insights. Have you ever wondered what would really happen if you decided to step away from someone's life? Not with anger, not in a dramatic exit, but with quiet intention. Not a goodbye laced with guilt or explanation, but a silent return to yourself. No fireworks, no confrontations. Just a slow, steady retreat from the invisible threads that kept you tied to their expectations, their needs, their idea of who you should be. Most people aren't prepared for someone like you to step away. Not because you were loud or central or demanding, but because your presence was consistent. You were the emotional glue, the sounding board, the one who remembered birthdays, who replied at midnight, who sensed the shift in tone before it became a problem. They didn't see you as fragile, exhausted, or lost. They saw you as dependable. And they never once asked what it cost you to keep showing up that way, and then one day you didn't respond right away. You skipped the call. You stayed quiet in the group chat. You started to say no without explanation. You began reclaiming your time, your thoughts, your space. And in that space, so foreign to those used to your presence, you triggered something far deeper than silence. You created discomfort, not because you became cold, but because you became clear. To them, it feels like a disruption, a minor earthquake in their emotional foundation. But to you, it's the first breath of air after being underwater for far too long. See, stepping away isn't about disappearing, it's about disconnection. The kind that happens when you stop performing roles that were never really yours to begin with. It's about detaching from identities you were assigned, the helper, the fixer, the peacekeeper. It's about letting go of being the one who always understands, even when no one tries to understand you back. And what makes this so powerful and so deeply unsettling to others is that your retreat is quiet. There's no door slam, no emotional meltdown, no accusatory monologue. And yet, your absence is felt like thunder in their chest. It's not the silence that unnerves them. It's what the silence represents. They suddenly have to face the parts of themselves that were hidden behind your presence. The self-doubt, the insecurities, the emotional clutter you kept sweeping under the rug, just by being there. You were their buffer from discomfort. You were the distraction from their internal chaos. And now, without you, they are left in the raw space of their own emotions. You didn't just step away from the relationship. You stepped away from the illusion they built with you at the center. And the collapse of that illusion is what shakes them most. You didn't break them. You didn't abandon them. You simply removed the scaffolding they had been leaning on, often without realizing it. And now everything that was dependent on your stability begins to tilt. And when things tilt, people panic. Not because they are weak, but because they never built emotional legs of their own. They used yours. That's where the shift begins. You see, most people don't actually grieve your presence. They grieve the version of themselves that only existed when you were there. They grieve the certainty, the comfort, the borrowed strength. And it's in that grieving process that the truth begins to surface. You were not just a person in their life. You were an emotional architecture they had built themselves around. You were the constant, the steady, the silence that kept their noise from becoming unbearable. And when you left, the noise returned. Now they are forced to ask, "Who am I?" when you are no longer here. That question haunts them. Not because they miss you, at least not at first, but because they miss who they were when they could count on you. Your departure doesn't just remove a person, it removes an entire emotional environment. And nothing reveals emotional dependency faster than the sudden disappearance of the one you leaned on. So when you walk away, not in anger, but in quiet clarity, you do more than reclaim your space. You start a psychological shift in the lives of those who once assumed you'd always be there, and that right there is the beginning of a storm they never saw coming. Your absence is not just an empty space. It's a cracked mirror, one that once reflected back an image they wanted to believe in. When you were around, they didn't have to face the dissonance in their identity because your presence smoothed the edges. You were the safe filter, the emotional buffer, the unconscious permission slip to avoid looking too closely at themselves. But now, with you gone, the mirror shatters. They're no longer staring at your face. They're staring at a distorted version of themselves, now unfiltered, unshielded. And for many people, that is more terrifying than heartbreak. Because your leaving doesn't just mean you're gone, it means the version of them that only existed in your presence is gone too. Think about it. How often have people said they needed you, that they couldn't have gotten through it without you? It sounds flattering, even heartwarming. But if you listen closely, you'll notice something strange. It was never really about you. It was about what your presence allowed them to feel about themselves. I feel strong when you're here. I feel understood when I talk to you. I feel okay when you listen. You became a function, not a person, a mirror that made them feel whole. And now, without you to reflect their curated sense of self, they begin to feel blurry. It starts with a quiet unease, a sense that something is off, even if they can't articulate it. That unease quickly grows into discomfort, then into emotional chaos. They may not even realize it's your absence triggering it. All they know is that they feel unmoored. But here's the truth they don't want to admit. What they miss most is the version of themselves they could access when you were around. Your presence didn't just give them comfort, it gave them clarity. It allowed them to bypass the messy work of self-reflection by outsourcing it to you. You made them feel seen, validated, grounded, and now they're left with questions they've never had to ask. What part of me was real, and what part was built around your attention? Who am I when I'm not being reflected back by someone else? Can I still feel worthy without someone constantly reminding me? These are brutal questions. Most people will do anything to avoid them. So instead, they revise the story. They repaint the narrative to regain control. Some will idealize you, turning you into the saint they never deserved. They'll romanticize your presence, elevate your absence into legend. But make no mistake, this isn't about love. It's about escaping accountability. Because as long as you were too good, they never have to ask why they didn't appreciate you more deeply. Others will go the opposite direction. They'll vilify you. You'll become cold, distant, selfish. Why? Because it's easier to paint you as the villain than admit you are the mirror, and now they hate the reflection. Both reactions are defenses, attempts to protect the ego from a truth it's not ready to face. And yet, beneath all that noise, something deeper is happening. Your absence is forcing them into a reckoning. Whether they know it or not, they are being asked to meet themselves without your presence as a crutch. It's the emotional equivalent of taking the training wheels off. Some wobble, some fall. A few get angry at the bike. But eventually, if they're honest, they begin to realize they weren't really riding it. You were holding the handlebars the whole time, and now they have to steer on their own. The hardest part for them is not that you're gone. It's that they no longer know who they are without you in the room. Your energy was a constant reference point. You were the backdrop, the buffer, the emotional lighting that made their flaws look softer. Now they're under harsh lights, exposed. That's the cost of losing a mirror. But here's the hidden gift. Some people will grow because of this. Your absence will force them to find a new reflection, not in others, but in themselves. They'll start to build a sturdier foundation, one that doesn't rely on your steady gaze. And when that happens, if it happens, they'll finally be free, not from you, but from the illusion they depended on. Your absence then becomes their invitation to become whole. But until then, they will feel lost, and you will feel misunderstood. Because few people realize the silent courage it takes to stop being the mirror, to let the reflection go, to walk away, not because you don't care, but because you finally do. You care enough to stop holding up an image that isn't real. You care enough to stop enabling emotional shortcuts. You care enough to allow them and yourself to see what was never truly seen. That's what happens when the mirror breaks. There's something unsettling about being left alone, not in a room, not in a place, but in your own mind. That's the silent chaos your absence creates in others. You didn't leave with accusations. You didn't storm out or slam a door. You just stopped answering, stopped showing up, stopped being the emotional bridge they'd walked across so many times without ever noticing it was you keeping the structure intact. And now they're stranded. At first, they don't realize it. They might even believe they're doing fine. They fill the space you once held with distractions, busyness, social media, new people, old habits. They convince themselves it's temporary. You'll come back. You just need time. Or worse, you were never that important anyway. But denial is always short-lived, because eventually the stillness creeps in. And in that stillness, without you to orbit around, they begin to notice something terrifying. They don't know how to sit with themselves. You see, when you were in their life, you unknowingly carried some of their emotional weight. You helped absorb the anxiety, soothe the insecurity, validate the chaos. You made their life make a little more sense, even if yours often didn't. And now, without your balancing presence, they feel exposed, raw, unanchored. They replay conversations in their head, searching for signs they missed. Did you drop hints? Were there warnings? Could they have stopped you from leaving? But none of those questions lead to clarity, because deep down, they already know. It wasn't something they did. It was something they didn't see. They never truly saw your weariness, your slow fade, your need for reciprocity. They only saw what you gave, never what it cost. And now they're left with the emotional debris. And emotional debris is the most difficult kind to clean up because it's invisible to everyone else. It lives in quiet moments, in the song that reminds them of your voice, in the silence after they share something, only to realize you're not there to respond. in the anxiety that flares up when they realize how much of their identity was tied to your presence. For some, your absence feels like an open wound, aching and obvious. For others, it's more like a low-grade fever they can't shake. It's not dramatic. It's just there. This quiet, gnawing sense that something important is missing and they can't quite name it. So they try to name it. They give it labels. You're selfish. You changed. You abandoned them. These labels give them temporary relief. Anger is easier than grief. Blame is easier than introspection. But the mirror's already gone, and without it, they must finally do what they avoided for so long. Look inward. That's when things get real. Because in the vacuum you left behind, the truth has room to echo. They start to realize how much of themselves was contingent on your approval, how their confidence grew in your encouragement, how their sense of belonging was tied to your presence. You were their anchor, not because you asked to be, but because you were there. And when someone is always there, they begin to fade into the background. They become part of the furniture, comforting, expected, unseen, until they're gone. And when they're gone, the absence screams louder than any goodbye ever could. But here's the paradox. Your leaving may be the only thing that could have woken them up. Because when people have no choice but to sit in the stillness of their own mind, something profound happens. They begin to see. Not everything, and not all at once, but enough. Enough to feel the fracture. Enough to understand that maybe they weren't as emotionally self-sufficient as they believed. That maybe they depended on you in ways they never acknowledged. Not out of malice, but out of habit. And maybe, just maybe, that discomfort is where healing begins. Some will resist it. They'll double down, seek new mirrors, find new people to hold the emotional weight they refuse to carry. But others, those rare few, will stay in the silence. They'll feel the emptiness. They'll wrestle with the questions. And eventually, they'll start to build from the inside out. That's the real fallout of your absence. Not anger, not blame, but reckoning. You weren't just a person in their life. You were a structure, a balance point, a regulator of emotional gravity. And now that you're gone, everything tilts, just enough to be noticed, just enough to be uncomfortable, just enough to demand attention. They won't all thank you. Most won't understand what you really did. But that doesn't mean it wasn't necessary, or powerful, or profound. Your absence might be the first real teacher they've had. Let's get one thing straight. You didn't leave to hurt anyone. You didn't step away to punish, to make a point, or to gain power. You left because you had to, because something inside you whispered, no, insisted, that it was time. Time to return to yourself. Time to reclaim what you'd quietly given away. Your peace, your energy, your emotional clarity. But to others, your absence felt like betrayal. A quiet exit always seems louder to those who never expected you to go. To them, you were a constant, an emotional resource, a reliable presence in a world that often felt uncertain. You never asked for that role, but you played it well. Maybe too well. So when you finally let go, they mistook it as you leaving. But here's the truth. No one says out loud, you didn't leave. You were reborn. You stopped being a version of yourself that was curated for the comfort of others. You stopped molding, adapting, pleasing. You stopped saying yes when your soul was screaming no. You stopped playing therapist, peacemaker, emotional anchor for people who never asked what you needed. That's not abandonment. That's awakening. And make no mistake, rebirth is not easy. It's lonely, confusing, sometimes terrifying. You walk away from familiar rhythms, even if those rhythms drained you. You leave behind patterns and people that once gave you identity, even if that identity was built on suppression. You begin to wonder if the cost of peace is too much silence. if freedom is worth the price of misunderstanding. But slowly, clarity begins to rise. In the quiet, you hear yourself again. In the space, you find room to expand. Without performing, for others, you discover who you are when no one is watching. And that version, the unfiltered, unmuted, unapologetic version of you, feels like coming home. That's what being reborn really is. Not a dramatic transformation, but a return, a remembering, a reconnection to your original self, the one that existed before you became a role. And yes, people will resist this version of you. They'll say you've changed, that you're distant, that you're not who you used to be. And they're right. You're not. You're no longer who they needed you to be. You're who you were, always meant to become. They may never understand your decision. They may write their own stories about why you left. Some will paint you as the villain. Others will romanticize your absence. Few will ever see the truth, that your departure was never about them. It was about survival, about sovereignty, about self-love in its rawest form. And here's the most radical part of all. By stepping away, you may have given them the greatest gift possible. You see, when you stop being someone's crutch, you give them a chance to stand. When you remove yourself from their emotional ecosystem, you force them to build their own center of gravity. It hurts them. It challenges them. But it might also free them. Growth doesn't always look like a group hug. Sometimes it looks like distance, silence, discomfort. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away, not out of resentment, but out of reverence for your own becoming. Letting go is not weakness. It's not failure. It's not giving up. It's choosing to no longer bleed for people who never asked why you were wounded in the first place. It's saying, I matter too. It's whispering, this time, I stay with me. And if you've read this far, there's something inside you that knows this is true. Maybe you've been the one to leave. Maybe you're thinking about leaving. Maybe someone left you, and now you're on the other side of the silence. Whatever your position in this story, know this. Absence is not always loss. Sometimes it's liberation. You didn't leave to disappear. You left to reappear, more whole, more honest, more you. And those who truly see you, who truly love you, will not resent your rebirth. They will recognize it, and they'll rise to meet you there, because the people meant for you will never ask you to shrink. So, what do you think happens when someone chooses to walk away? Not in anger, but in quiet self-preservation? Have you ever been the one who stepped away? Or perhaps the one left behind, facing the silence they left in their place? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you experienced this kind of emotional distance on either side of it? Share your story in the comments below. You never know who might find comfort or clarity in your words. Thank you so much for watching. If this video sparked something in you, if it gave you a moment of insight or a sense of peace, please take a second to like the video and subscribe to the Top Hidden Knowledge channel. We share weekly content on personal growth, emotional awareness, spirituality, and the deeper layers of human experience. Your support helps us continue creating thoughtful, meaningful videos for seekers like you. And if you're still curious, still hungry for more inner clarity, be sure to explore our other videos. There's so much more to uncover. Until next time, stay mindful, stay grounded, and remember, sometimes walking away isn't the end. It's the beginning of your return to yourself.